The vast command ship of the Arcturian Dominion moved silently through space, its metal hull gleaming under the light of distant stars. The ship was huge, bigger than any city on Earth, with weapons that could destroy a planet. Inside, the ship hummed with the sound of machines and alien voices. On the bridge, Admiral Dak stood tall. He had 4 arms, a hard shell like a beetle, and eyes that glowed yellow in the dim light. His arms were clasped behind his back as he watched the battle on the large screen in front of him. His mouthparts clicked together when he saw the Centauri defense station break apart under his ship's attack. "The last pocket of resistance has fallen, Admiral," said Commander Jin. Jin was human, from Korea, and the only human officer among the top ranks of the Dominion. He stood straight in his black uniform, his face showing nothing, but his dark eyes held worry he tried to hide. "Excellent," Dak said, his voice deep and scratchy. "The Centauri Republic is no more. Their peaceful ways made them weak. The Dominion now controls this entire sector." Jin watched as the pieces of the station drifted apart. Inside that station had been people, beings with families and hopes. The Centauri were known for their art, their music, and their kindness. Now they were just another conquered people. "What about reports of their alliance with Earth?" Jin asked carefully. He had to be careful when he mentioned his home planet. Admiral Dak waved one of his 4 hands in the air. "Humans, they're primitive creatures barely able to reach their own moon. Our intelligence suggests they have no significant space capabilities. A species not worth our concern." Jin nodded but said nothing more. 10 years ago, he had joined the Dominion forces because they had promised to spare Earth if humans proved useful. He had risen through the ranks, following orders, watching as the Dominion took over world after world. He had told himself it was necessary to protect his home. Now, he wasn't so sure. On the screen, Dominion ships surrounded the Centauri home planet. The planet was beautiful, with blue oceans and green lands. Cities glittered on its surface. Soon, those cities would belong to the Dominion. The people would become workers, or worse. "Begin landing procedures," Dak ordered. "I want control of their capital by local nightfall." "Yes, Admiral," said another officer, this one with 6 eyes and skin like tree bark. Jin looked at the reports coming in on his screen. Casualty numbers scrolled past. Millions dead in the final attack. He closed his eyes for a moment. What the Dominion didn't know, what Jin had kept secret for years, was that the Centauri had been Earth's first and only galactic allies for nearly 2 decades. While the rest of the galaxy saw humans as primitive, the Centauri had seen potential. They had shared their technology and knowledge in secret, away from the Dominion's watchful eyes. Jin had a small device hidden in his quarters. It could send messages directly to Earth through a special channel. Tonight, he would need to warn them. The Dominion would come for Earth next, no matter what Dak thought now. On the far side of the Centauri planet, away from the main battle, a small ship pulled away from a hidden dock. It was a Centauri vessel, but smaller than their usual ships. It was built for speed, not battle. Inside the ship, Captain Sun worked quickly at the controls. She was Korean, in her 40s, with short black hair and steady hands even in crisis. For 5 years, she had been Earth's main contact with the Centauri. Now she might be one of the last free Centauri allies alive. "Systems check complete," said a soft voice from the ship's computer. "Jump drive at 60% capacity." Sun frowned. 60% might not be enough for the long jump to Earth, but there was no time to fix it. Behind her, in the ship's small medical bay, 3 injured Centauri scientists lay on beds. They had information Earth would need, plans for weapons that might help against the Dominion. "Course set for Sol system," Sun said, her fingers moving across the control panel. Warning lights flashed red across her console. The ship had been damaged during their escape from the city. Through the view screen, she could see Dominion ships landing on the planet's surface. Troops would pour out, taking control of everything. The beautiful Centauri civilization, known for its art and philosophy, would be stripped of anything valuable. "Hold together," she whispered to the ship as more warning lights appeared. "We need to warn Earth." She had a husband and daughter back on Earth. They thought she worked for an international space agency. They didn't know she had been living among aliens, learning their technology, preparing Earth for a war that was now arriving sooner than anyone had expected. The ship's engines glowed blue as they powered up. Sun guided the vessel toward a hidden jump point, a place where the fabric of space was thin, allowing faster-than-light travel. "Captain," one of the Centauri called from the back. His name was Lur, and his skin shimmered like opals. "Dominion sensors will detect us when we power the jump drive." "We don't have a choice," Sun replied. "If we don't make it to Earth, billions will die not knowing what's coming." She activated the final jump sequence. The ship shuddered as energy built up around it. On the Dominion command ship, an alarm sounded. "Admiral, call the sensor officer. We're detecting an energy signature consistent with a jump drive activation." Dak turned sharply. "Where?" "Southern Hemisphere, moving away fast." "Destroy it," Dak ordered. Jin's heart raced. A jump-capable ship meant someone was escaping, someone who could warn others about what had happened here. "Targeting systems locked," the weapons officer announced. On Sun's ship, the jump drive reached full power. Space itself seemed to bend around the small vessel. "Jump now," Lur called out as their sensors detected Dominion weapons locking on. Captain Sun pushed the final control. The ship vanished into hyperspace just as the Dominion fired, their energy beams passing through empty space. The ship vanished into hyperspace just as Dominion sensors detected its presence. Back on the bridge, Dak growled in frustration. "Find out where that ship was going," he ordered. Jin pretended to check his console, hiding the small smile that briefly crossed his face. Someone had escaped. There was still hope. 3 weeks later, the central plaza on Arcturus Prime shone under 3 suns. Thousands of beings from across the Dominion gathered to celebrate their victory. The buildings around the plaza reached high into the purple sky. Each one displayed huge moving pictures showing the Dominion ships destroying Centauri worlds. Music played loudly from floating speakers. The sounds were strange to human ears, but to the Dominion species, it was the music of victory. The crowd roared as soldiers marched in perfect lines across the main square. Their boots hit the ground at the same time, making a sound like thunder. In the center of it all, a floating platform rose above the crowd. Admiral Dak stood on it, taller and prouder than before. His 4 arms were now covered in gold armor. Around the platform hung pieces of broken Centauri ships and flags from their conquered worlds. Next to Dak stood Supreme Leader Vorn. Vorn was the oldest and most powerful of all the Dominion leaders. His skin was gray and wrinkled, but his 6 eyes were sharp and missed nothing. When he raised his arms, the crowd went silent. "Citizens of the mighty Dominion," Vorn's voice boomed across the plaza. "Today marks the dawn of the era of unity. With the fall of the Centauri Republic, the last opposition to our benevolent rule has been eliminated." The crowd cheered so loudly the ground shook. Children from the warrior class waved flags and threw flowers. Merchants counted the profits they would make from new Centauri resources. Scientists thought of the new technologies they would study. For his great victory, Vorn continued, "I name Admiral Dak as Grand Marshal of all Dominion forces." Dak stepped forward as a golden collar was placed around his neck. This was the highest honor any military leader could receive. His mandibles clicked rapidly in what his species considered a smile. "I accept this honor," Dak said, "and I promise to bring even more worlds under our control. The Dominion will rule the entire galaxy." More cheers erupted. Fireworks exploded overhead, filling the sky with green and blue light. Among the gathered officials on a lower platform, Commander Jin watched silently. He wore the black uniform of a senior officer, with silver stripes on his shoulders. Around him, other officers laughed and celebrated, but Jin felt sick inside. 10 years ago, he had joined the Dominion forces because they had promised peace and order for the galaxy. They had said that joining the Dominion would protect weaker worlds. Jin had believed them then. Now, having seen the Centauri cities burn and their people forced into work camps, doubt ate at him like a disease. This wasn't protection. It was slavery. "Enjoying the celebration, Commander?" asked an officer next to him. This officer had skin like blue scales and teeth that showed when he spoke. "Of course," Jin lied. "A great victory for us all." "Indeed. They say Earth might be next. Your homeworld, yes. They'll be grateful for our rule." Jin nodded but said nothing. In his pocket, he held a small device with a message for Earth. He hadn't been able to send it yet. The Dominion watched all communications too closely during celebration times. 5 blocks from the main plaza, in a large white building, Dominion researchers worked quickly to study Centauri technology. The science facility was clean and bright, with rows of tables covered in broken machines and computers. Professor Ta bent over a small silver device. He was older than Jin, with gray hair and glasses that he didn't really need but wore anyway. The Dominion thought they were a medical device, but really, they helped him scan for listening devices. Ta had been a scientist on Earth before the Dominion came. They had taken him because of his knowledge of communication systems. For 15 years, he had worked for them, designing better ways for their ships to talk to each other across space. "Interesting," he muttered, finding encrypted transmissions in the Centauri device. The screen in front of him showed that the messages had been sent to a system the database identified as Sol, Earth's system. These communications with Earth were far more sophisticated than our intelligence suggested. Next to him, a 6-armed researcher looked up. "Did you say something, Professor?" "Nothing important," Ta said quickly. "Just talking to myself. Old Earth had it." When the other researcher looked away, Ta connected a small data stick to the device. With quick fingers, he copied the information. The files showed years of messages between Earth and the Centauri. There were designs for ships and weapons that Ta had never seen before. Like Jin, Ta had begun to question why he worked for the Dominion. At first, it had been to protect Earth by making himself useful. Now he wondered if he had been helping the very force that would eventually destroy his home. He slipped the data stick into his pocket. Tonight, he would find a way to contact Jin. They had met only a few times at official functions, but Ta knew Jin felt the same way he did. Together, maybe they could warn Earth. Across the city, in a dark building with no windows, the Dominion Intelligence Headquarters processed reports from across the galaxy. Officer Han sat at a desk piled high with datapads. He was younger than Jin and Ta, only 30 Earth years old. His uniform was gray, marking him as intelligence rather than military. Han had joined the Dominion because they paid well, and he had family on Earth who needed money. He didn't care much about politics. Do the job, get paid, stay alive. That was his motto. A report came across his desk from a border outpost near the Sol system. The outpost had detected unusual energy patterns that might indicate jump drive activation. Han read it quickly and sighed. Unusual energy signatures near Sol. Probably just solar flares. Humans don't have hyperspace capability, he said, tossing the report into a bin marked low priority. Another officer looked up. "You sure? The Grand Marshal is concerned about any activity near Earth." Han laughed. "I'm from Earth. Trust me, we're still using chemical rockets and complaining about how long it takes to get to Mars. If they had jump technology, I'd know." What Han didn't know was that the energy signatures were from test flights of Earth's first warships, built with Centauri help, and now preparing for their first major jump. In his comfortable apartment that night, Han watched the celebration fireworks from his window. He sipped a drink and thought about the promotion he would get next month. By dismissing that report, he had just made a mistake that the entire Dominion would soon regret. Back at the main plaza, Grand Marshal Dak raised his arms as the celebration reached its peak. "Tomorrow, we begin planning our next expansion," he announced. "The Dominion will grow stronger with each new world." In the shadows of the crowd, Jin slipped away. It was time to find Tai and see if together they could change the future. The final day of celebration brought the biggest parade in Dominion history. The sky above Arcturus Prime filled with thousands of warships. They flew in perfect patterns, their engines glowing blue against the purple sky. The crowds below watched with their heads tilted back, mouths open in wonder. Children pointed as fighter ships zoomed overhead, leaving trails of colored smoke. The massive battleships moved more slowly, their huge forms blocking out the suns as they passed. Each ship had fought in the war against the Centauri. Each one carried weapons that could destroy entire cities. On a large stage in the central plaza, Grand Marshal Dak stood tall in his new golden armor. Medals covered his chest. His forearms gestured widely as he spoke to the crowd about the glory of the Dominion. "Our fleet is the strongest in the galaxy." Dak's voice boomed through speakers. "No force can stand against us. We have crushed the Centauri, and soon all remaining free worlds will join us or face destruction." The crowd roared their approval. Soldiers beat their weapons against their shields in a rhythm that shook the ground. In the viewing stands, the rich and powerful nodded and smiled. Commander Jin stood at attention behind Dak. His face showed nothing, but his mind raced. Last night, he had met with Professor Ta in secret. Ta had shown him the data about Earth's communications with the Centauri. Jin had tried to send a warning message to Earth, but all communication channels were blocked for the celebration. Now, it might be too late. "The age of resistance is over," Dak continued. "The age of the Dominion has." A young officer ran onto the stage. His uniform was wrinkled, and his eyes were wide with fear. He whispered urgently into the ear of Dak's aide. The aide's face turned pale. "Sir," the aide interrupted, stepping forward. "You must come immediately." Dak's mandibles clicked in anger. "I am speaking to the people. What could be so important?" The young officer stepped forward. His voice shook. "Sir, massive energy signatures detected. Unknown vessels emerging from hyperspace." The crowd heard his words. A murmur of confusion spread. Hyperspace jumps were not allowed near Arcturus Prime without special permission. All expected ships were already here for the celebration. "What nonsense is this?" Dak growled, but he followed the officer off the stage to a mobile command center. Inside, screens showed the space at the edge of the system. There, the fabric of space itself seemed to tear open. 7 points of light appeared, growing larger. "Show me," Dak demanded. The screens zoomed in. 7 enormous warships materialized where empty space had been moments before. Each vessel was at least twice the size of the largest Dominion battleship. Their hulls were black as space itself, with glowing blue lines tracing their length. They moved with perfect coordination, spreading out into a battle formation. The celebration fell silent as the images appeared on the big screens around the plaza. People pointed in confusion and fear. The Dominion ships in the sky stopped their formations and began to move toward defensive positions. "What are they? Who dares to enter Dominion space uninvited?" Dak's voice had lost its confidence. "Unknown design, sir," an officer reported. "But sensors indicate they appear to be of human origin." "Impossible." Dak slammed one of his fists on the console. "Humans are primitives. They have no such technology." Jin stepped forward. His heart beat fast, but he kept his face calm. "The ships do show some Centauri design elements, sir. Perhaps the humans learned more from them than we knew." On the bridge of the lead ship, Captain Yoon sat calmly in the command chair. She was 50 Earth years old, with short gray hair and eyes that had seen war before. Her uniform was dark gray with silver rank bars on the shoulders. Around her, the crew worked silently at their stations. No one spoke above a whisper. They all knew what this moment meant. The vessel, named Thermopylae, was Earth's first dreadnought, built in secret facilities hidden in asteroid belts. Its design combined Centauri technology with human ingenuity. Its weapons were more powerful than anything humans had dreamed possible just 20 years ago. Through the large front window, Captain Yoon could see the Dominion fleet scrambling into defensive positions, thousands of ships trying to form a line against her 7. It might have been funny if the stakes weren't so high. "All systems report ready, Captain," said her first officer. "The other ships are in position." Yoon nodded. "And our guest, Ambassador Kang, is ready." "Good." Yoon straightened her uniform. "Open communications. Let them see us." Across the Dominion fleet, screens flickered to life. Command centers, ship bridges, and even the public screens in the plaza suddenly showed humans in sleek gray uniforms. The celebration crowd gasped. Many had never seen a human before, except for the few like Jin who served the Dominion. Behind Captain Yoon, the other 6 dreadnoughts moved into perfect formation. Normandy, Alamo, Midway, Stalingrad, Marathon, and Britannia. Each carried enough firepower to devastate a planet. A stern-faced man stepped forward to stand beside Captain Yoon. Ambassador Kang was older, with deep lines on his face and steel in his eyes. He wore a simple black suit with a single pin showing Earth's symbol. His message was brief. "We know what you did." 4 words, just 4 simple words, but they carried the weight of Earth's judgment. They carried the knowledge of the Centauri genocide. They carried the promise of consequences. In the command center on Arcturus Prime, Grand Marshal Dak's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. His aides backed away, knowing this sound meant their leader was close to violence. "Impossible," Dak repeated, but his voice was weaker now. "Humans are primitives." Jin stepped forward. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to smile slightly. "It seems we've underestimated them, sir." On the screens, Ambassador Kang continued. "The Centauri were our friends. You destroyed them, thinking no one would stand against you. You were wrong." The 7 Earth ships began to move forward, their massive engines glowing brighter. Dominion sensors analyzed their power readings and found them off the charts. "Sir," an aide reported to Dak, "those ships are registering energy levels we've never seen before. Their shields appear to be using technology unknown to us." Dak turned to his communications officer. "Order all ships to target those vessels. Prepare to fire." The officer hesitated. "Sir, there are still civilians in the flight paths. Our celebration ships." "I don't care. Those are human ships. They cannot be allowed to reach Arcturus Prime." On the Thermopylae, Captain Yoon watched as the Dominion fleet moved to attack positions. She had expected this. For 20 years, she had trained for this moment. "They're preparing to fire, Captain," her tactical officer reported. "Hold position," Yoon ordered calmly. "Let them make the first move." Ambassador Kang nodded in agreement. "Let the galaxy see who strikes first." Behind them, the 6 other Earth ships held their positions. Inside each one, human crews waited silently. Engineers monitored power levels. Weapons officers kept their fingers near, but not on, their controls. Medical teams prepared for casualties. In the command center on Arcturus Prime, Jin watched as Dak gave the order to fire. He closed his eyes briefly. There would be no going back after this. Earth had revealed itself, and the Dominion would never stop until one side was defeated. As the first Dominion ships fired their weapons, Jin wondered if Earth truly understood what they had started. But when he opened his eyes and saw the calm faces of the humans on the screen, he realized they understood perfectly. They had come prepared for war. "Launch all fighters," Dak ordered, his voice high and tight with panic. His 4 arms moved quickly, pointing at different screens. "Target their engines and weapons." The Dominion officers rushed to obey. Alarms sounded throughout the fleet. Within minutes, thousands of smaller fighter ships poured out from the larger vessels. They looked like insects swarming from a disturbed nest. The fighters formed perfect lines and moved toward the 7 Earth ships. At the same time, the larger Dominion battleships aimed their main weapons. Green energy built up at the front of each ship. When they fired, The space between the fleets lit up with bright green beams. The beams hit the Earth ships directly. But something strange happened. Instead of exploding or breaking apart, the Earth vessels remained unchanged. The green energy seemed to spread out over their black hulls, and then fade away. On the main screen in the Dominion Command Center, Dak watched with his mouthparts clicking rapidly. "What is happening?" "Report." "Sir," a sensor officer said, voice shaking, "they have some kind of shield technology. Our weapons are having no effect." "Impossible." Dak slammed all four of his fists down, hit them again, used full power. Aboard the Thermopylae, Captain Yoon sat calmly in her command chair. Around her, the bridge crew worked at their stations. No one shouted. No one panicked. The ship shook slightly as more Dominion weapons hit their shields. "They're using standard Arcturian plasma weapons," reported the science officer. "Shields holding at 98%. Yoon nodded. "Thank you." Commander Sung, her tactical officer, studied the screens showing the Dominion fleet movements. He was younger than Yoon, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Their formation suggests they expect us to maneuver like Centauri vessels," Sung said. "They're setting up to trap us if we move in the traditional Centauri attack pattern." Yoon smiled slightly. The Dominion had fought the Centauri for years. They knew how Centauri ships moved and fought. But humans were not Centauri. "Then let's show them how humans fight," Yoon replied. "Deploy the Aegis drones." Sung pressed a series of buttons on his console. Aegis drones deploying from all ships. Along the sides of each Earth dreadnought, hundreds of small doors opened. Thousands of small craft, each no bigger than a car, shot out into space. The drones were sleek and fast, with no pilots inside. They were controlled by advanced computers that could make decisions faster than any living being. Unlike the neat lines of Dominion fighters, the drones moved in patterns that seemed random. They formed swirling clouds, then split apart, then came back together. Some moved fast, others slow. No two moved the same way. The Dominion fighters tried to target them but couldn't predict where they would go next. It was like trying to shoot individual raindrops in a storm. On the Dominion flagship, confusion spread like a disease. Officers shouted over each other. Screens showed warning symbols as targeting systems failed. "Their shields are absorbing our energy weapons," an officer reported frantically, his 6 eyes blinking rapidly. "And our fighters can't lock onto those small craft." Dak's face darkened with rage. "Switch to kinetic projectiles," he commanded. The order went out across the fleet. The Dominion ships had another type of weapon for situations like this. Massive railguns extended from their hulls. These weapons didn't shoot energy, but actual metal objects at incredible speeds. Even the strongest shields usually couldn't stop physical objects moving that fast. The railguns fired with booming sounds that carried even through the vacuum of space. Huge metal spikes, each as long as a bus, shot toward the Earth ships. But the humans were ready for this too. Thin beams of blue light shot out from the Earth ships, hitting each projectile with perfect accuracy. The metal spikes exploded into dust before they could reach their targets. Other projectiles that got through found themselves pushed off course by invisible forces. They curved away from the Earth ships as if something was bending space itself around them. "What is happening?" Dak screamed. "How are they doing this?" "Sir," a science officer reported, "they appear to be using point defense lasers of unprecedented accuracy and some form of localized gravity manipulation. These are technologies we've never encountered before." From his position near the back of the command center, Jin watched the battle unfold. His face showed a mixture of awe and dread. The Dominion had believed humans were barely able to reach their own moon. Yet here they were, demonstrating technology beyond anything the Dominion possessed. "They've been preparing for this," Jin realized, speaking quietly to himself. "For years." While the Dominion continued its direct assault, the Earth drones began their own attack. They darted between the Dominion fighters, moving too quickly to be hit, When they got close enough, they released small pulses of energy that disabled rather than destroy their targets. Dominion fighter after fighter went dark, drifting powerless in space. Their pilots, unable to control their ships, could only watch as the battle continued around them. Captain, Commander Sung reported on the Thermopylae. Aegis drones report 40% of enemy fighters neutralized. No casualties on either side. Yoon nodded. Good. Continue the containment strategy. Remember, we're here for justice, not revenge. The Earth ships began to move forward now, slowly and steadily. Their formation changed constantly, never presenting the same target twice. The Dominion fleet, trained to fight in rigid patterns, couldn't adapt quickly enough. They're breaking through our lines. A Dominion officer shouted. 3rd and 5th divisions are compromised. Dak paced back and forth, all 4 arms waving. How? How are they doing this? They're just humans. An older officer stepped forward, his face grave. Sir, I've been analyzing their tactics. They don't fight like any species we've encountered. Their formations have no pattern we can predict. Each ship seems to make its own decisions while still somehow working with the others. Jin understood what the officer meant. The Dominion fought like a machine, each part doing exactly what it was programmed to do. Humans fought like humans. Unpredictable, creative, able to change plans in an instant. As the battle progressed into its second hour, it became clear that humanity wasn't just fighting with advanced technology. They were fighting with a resourcefulness and adaptability that the structured Dominion forces couldn't match. More Dominion ships went dark as the Aegis drones attached themselves to larger vessels, disabling their power systems. Earth's Dreadnoughts continued their advance, now moving directly toward Arcturus Prime. Sir, Jin said, stepping forward to address Dak. Perhaps we should consider opening communications. They haven't destroyed any of our ships when they clearly could have. They may be willing to talk. Dak turned to Jin, his eyes burning with anger. You dare suggest surrender to your own species? Are you a traitor, Commander? Not surrender, Jin said calmly. Negotiation. There's a difference. On the screens above them, the Earth ships continued their unstoppable advance. The once mighty Dominion fleet, pride of 1,000 worlds, scattered before them like leaves in the wind. After 6 hours of fighting, the battle was over. Half of the Dominion fleet drifted in space, their lights off, their engines silent. Earth's computer experts had taken control of their systems from a distance. The other half of the fleet had pulled back to protect Arcturus Prime. Not a single human ship had been damaged badly. Grand Marshal Dak stood on the bridge of his flagship. His 4 arms hung at his sides. His golden armor seemed less bright now. Through the main window, he could see the Thermopylae approaching. The massive Earth ship moved slowly, its black hull and blue lines making it look like a piece of night sky come alive. Why haven't they destroyed us? Dak wondered aloud. His officers had no answer. In all their years of war, the Dominion had never shown mercy. They expected none in return. Suddenly, the air in the center of the bridge shimmered and glowed. 2 human figures appeared out of nowhere. They had not used a shuttle or ship to board. They had simply appeared. The Dominion officers backed away in fear. Captain Yoon stood tall in her gray uniform, her short hair neatly combed. Beside her, Ambassador Kang looked stern in his black suit. Neither carried weapons, yet the Dominion guards didn't dare approach them. How did you get on my ship? Dak demanded, trying to sound brave. The same way we disabled your fleet, Yoon replied calmly. With technology you chose not to believe we had. Kang stepped forward. We could have destroyed your entire fleet, he stated, his voice level and calm. But unlike you, we don't seek total domination. Dak's mouthparts clicked in confusion. In his world, the strong crushed the weak. It was the way of things. Then what do you want? Justice, replied Yoon, not revenge. She pressed a small device on her wrist. A hologram appeared in the air between them. It showed dozens of planets and space stations, On each one, Centauri people lived and worked alongside humans. Children played in parks. Adults built homes and studied in libraries. While you celebrated your victory, Yoon explained, we rescued millions. For every Centauri city you destroyed, we saved thousands of people. They live with us now, as equals, not as slaves. Dak stared at the images. Impossible. Our reports said. Your reports were wrong, Kang said, just as they were wrong about Earth. We've been working with the Centauri for 20 years. We learned from each other. We grew stronger together, not by conquering, but by cooperating. From the back of the bridge, Jin stepped forward. The other Dominion officers looked at him with surprise. I wish to speak, he said loudly. All eyes turned to him. Even Dax seemed too shocked to stop him. There are many within the Dominion who don't support the Supreme Leader's aggression, Jin said. We've been waiting for an opportunity to reform our society. We believe in order, yes, but not in cruelty. Not in genocide. As he spoke, several other officers nodded. They had hidden their true feelings for years, afraid of being punished or killed for speaking out. Ambassador Kang studied Jin's face. Then perhaps this confrontation can end differently than it began. What are you suggesting? Dak asked, his voice quieter now. Peace, Yoon said simply. Real peace, not submission. Earth doesn't want to rule the Dominion. We want all species to be free to choose their own paths. In the days that followed, the human fleet kept their positions around Arcturus Prime. Their ships were a constant reminder of what would happen if the Dominion tried to fight again. Meanwhile, talks began between Earth's leaders and those within the Dominion who wanted change. Supreme Leader Vorn was removed from power when evidence of his crimes was shown to all Dominion worlds. Many people had not known the truth about the wars. They had been told they were bringing peace and order, not death and slavery. Jin and others who had secretly opposed the regime's cruelty formed a group called the Transition Council. They began the hard work of changing the Dominion into something better. New laws were written. Old leaders who had ordered terrible things were put on trial. On Earth, Captain Sun stepped off a transport ship and into the arms of her husband and daughter. They had not seen her for 3 years. Her daughter had grown taller. Her husband had more gray in his hair, but they were together again. Did we really win? Her daughter asked. Sun looked up at the sky, where Earth's ships were still visible as bright stars. We did more than win, she said. We showed there's a better way. In a new research center built in what used to be Dominion space, Professor Ta worked with scientists from a dozen species. Together, they studied how to use technology to help people, not hurt them. His knowledge of both Centauri and Dominion systems made him the perfect person to lead the project. Officer Han, who had once tossed aside warnings about Earth's capabilities, now had a new job. He traveled between worlds, helping species understand each other better. His mistake had merely cost the Dominion everything. Now he worked to make sure such mistakes never happened again. I should have paid more attention, he often said. Sometimes the reports you think don't matter are the most important ones. The galaxy learned an important lesson. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't our weapons or technology. It was our ability to both fight when necessary and show kindness when possible. Earth became known not as conquerors, but as protectors of a new way of living together based on respect and cooperation. 1 month after the battle, Captain Yoon stood on the observation deck of the Thermopylae. Through the large windows, she could see ships from many different species moving peacefully through space. Some were shaped like discs, others like arrows or stars. Once, they would have fought each other. Now, they worked together. Commander Sung joined her. The new trade agreement with the reformed Dominion worlds was signed today, he reported. Good, Yoon said. Do you think it will last? Sung asked, looking out at the stars. Yoon smiled, watching a small Centauri ship fly past, escorted by a former Dominion vessel. Both had been enemies just weeks ago. Nothing is certain, she said, But today we showed the galaxy there's another way forward, not through force alone, but through the courage to show mercy when victorious. In orbit around Arcturus Prime, the 7 Earth dreadnoughts remained. Their presence reminded everyone of humanity's resolve to protect peace. But it was Earth's compassion, not its weapons, that had truly changed the stars. The end.